We're going to move on now from oxygen and aeration to heaters and chillers, okay? I'll tell you this right now, heaters and chillers are why 95% of people will fail with aquaponics, because they don't keep water temperatures in an appropriate range for growing. And there are so many factors out there for us to have to worry about that if you don't keep temperature within a specified range, something can happen just temperature related, and all of a sudden you're looking for, is this from a pest? Is there a nutrient imbalance? What's happening here? Is this a disease? There's so many different things that could be happening. A lot of times it is just temperature related. So something we're going to try, I'm going to drill into your heads on a smaller scale. You're right, grow with the seasons and grow appropriate crops for the temperatures. You're going to do just fine. If you're trying to do a multi-acre facility and grow something like lettuce or basil and you're not thinking about doing temperature control, you're going to be out of business quick. There's no way you're going to do year-round production. Greenhouse temperatures can get in the high 90s and you can still grow beautiful lettuce that doesn't bolt, that doesn't do any of that, but you need the water temperature in an appropriate range, 72 to 76 degrees. So if you don't pay attention to that, your water temperature's in the mid 80s, which maybe tilapia would love, well, your plants aren't going to love that. So when you really need to look at that and look at keep that in your mind throughout your entire design, that chillers, water temperature, heat pumps, anything that affects the temperature, they're expensive devices. It's not cheap, but that's the difference between growing year-round and not. And how you overcome that is you charge more off-season and you recoup the cost for that device that's allowing you to grow beautiful stuff when nobody else can. So let's talk a little bit about this. Again, a heater or a chiller is used to control the temperature of the culture water. There are several types. An inline chiller, which means the coil, which is what gets cold or hot, is actually in the middle of a PVC pipe. So you see it go in here and then turn, and you'll have the whole coil inside the middle of a piece of PVC pipe. The water goes in one way, past that coil, that's where the temperature change happens, and then it exits and goes back to your tank or wherever you're sending it. A drop-in coil is where you simply have a coil with a cord that goes back to the chiller or heater, and you drop it in your sump. It's got just a big ring of coils and you drop it in there. And then you have a heat pump, which actually does both. It heats and it chills in the same unit. So you can set the set point and it will keep that temperature no matter if it gets too cold and has to heat it, or if it gets too hot and has to chill it down. Larger size units actually use a separate condensing unit and heat exchanger, okay? So these look like an air conditioning unit, like a large unit you'd see on a house or on a, an office building. And you've got your condensing unit outside with the fan and all the, the components of the condensing unit. Inside, you'll actually have the heat exchanger and your plumbing right by your fish tanks. So that's in a larger operation, but don't be surprised if you're getting into that. That's how you'll see those larger units offered. So some tips here. Insulate as much of that piping as possible. Okay, the more we insulate, which is spending a little bit more money up front, the more it's going to save us long term in energy usage. And I guarantee you, you will spend more money in energy trying to overcome those temperature differences than you will spend on insulation here. So insulate as much as possible. Insulate as much of the plant growing trough as possible if your, say, greenhouse is not temperature controlled. If the whole greenhouse is temperature controlled, your trough is going to find the ambient temperature there, the same temperature as the greenhouse. It will come up to that. But if, let's say, you're in an open growing environment, insulate as much as possible if you're actually going to chill that tank. And keep the chiller well ventilated so it's not breathing its own exhaust. I've seen many times, and fish tanks, people will install a chiller underneath the cabinet and close it up. Heat builds up in there, and it's basically breathing heat and exchanging heat. And it does a very poor and inefficient job at chilling the water. Same thing outside. Some people will make a separate tiny little equipment room, and it gets extremely hot in there if they don't build in ventilation. So just be forewarned, if you've never felt what it feels like, go sit beside an air conditioning unit and you'll feel the hot air pumping out. Water must be within the required flow rate of the chiller at all times, or it will either not chill the water. If the water is going by the coil too fast, it's not going to chill it properly, or if it's going too slow, it'll actually freeze solid and break the PVC casing around the coil. So it freezes up, ice expands, and it cracks the PVC case. You finally shut it off, let it thaw out, plug it back in, and water comes pouring out of the unit because the whole PVC shell is broken. And guess what? That's not repairable. So you can repair it because you can get in there with some epoxy tape, and I've done that. To some trashed units that I was trying to bring back to life. But a manufacturer is going to say, guess what? You messed up, buy a new one. So this is very important. Some of the better chillers actually come with a flow switch that is pre-installed in that unit. So if you fall outside of the desired flow rate that's required to operate, it'll shut the chiller off so it doesn't chill, and freeze up and break itself. So that's very good. But if that unit does not come with one, you need to buy one and install it there at the inlet of the chiller. Most efficient when it's placed after the filtration and just before the culture tank, okay? We don't want a bunch of nasty solids building up in here, and honestly, we would rather not have a bunch of nitrifying bacteria trying to attach and fix to the coils in the inside of that unit. The thicker that biofilm becomes, the less efficient it's going to be. So we want to place this just before the culture tank. Also because it's cold, and as soon as it leaves the chiller, it's going to start to warm back up, or vice versa if you're heating. So as it's going through the pipework, temperature's starting to try to regulate. The closer this is to the culture tank, the more efficient you're going to be. So we're going to use the following formula to actually size the heater or the chiller. Heating, chilling doesn't matter. It's about delta T. That's the total temperature change you're trying to make occur. Delta T, whether it's 10 degrees up, 10 degrees down, 5 degrees up, whatever the temperature change you want, that's the delta T. So we use this formula. Total gallons that you want to chill times the delta T, which is your desired temperature change, times 8.33, that's a constant in the formula, divided by 12,000, another constant in the formula, and divided by how many hours you want to take to pull that down, pull the temperature down, your desired change, okay? And right here I have in here 12 hours. That's the number I would use if you're sizing this chiller, 12 hours. And this equals how many horsepower of chiller or heater that you need to perform the desired function. And now, if you look up this formula online, you're going to see 24 hours there, okay? That's the main formula you see for temperature change. But within a chilling unit, and because of the water volume we're dealing with, you will not get the desired pull down if you use 24 for that number, okay? Take it from a guy who's seen a lot of undersized chillers in his life. That won't work. So if you take that number and go to Aqualogic or to C-Chill, any of the other chilling manufacturing companies, you're going to see that they will recommend above the number that you calculate using 24. So again, done this a lot, use 12 hours, and that will be a good solid number to give you the horsepower needed. And here's an example. 24,000 gallons worth of water, okay? Big swimming pool, 4 different culture tanks, however you want to imagine this. 24,000 gallons of water and delta T of 10 degrees Fahrenheit. So we want to change that by 10 degrees Fahrenheit, whether it's cooler or warmer. So we do 24,000 times 10, which is our delta T, times 8.33, divided by 12,000, divided by 12 hours, okay? Given, given, given. This gives us 13.88 horsepower. We just calculated the chiller, just like a professional, okay? That's awesome. 13.88 horsepower can be converted into BTUs, because a lot of the units you buy them in BTUs. That's how they're rated. They're not going to just be rated by horsepower. So if we want to convert that to BTU, we divide 12,000 BTUs by 1 horsepower. So what's that mean? 1 horsepower is equal to 12,000 BTUs. Sorry about that. How do we do the multiplication? Easy. 13.88 horsepower times 12,000 BTUs equals 166,560 BTUs. That's the energy consumed. That's probably what you're going to use to size the actual piece of equipment. This is a safe number that's going to work. Okay, now what happens if you oversize a chiller? It does not use more energy. It just comes on and off and cycles on and off less frequently, okay? Because it doesn't take as long to do the temperature change. So it actually doesn't take any more energy, but it costs more money up front. So that's why you don't want to oversize these by a far amount and change this to 3 hours or something like that, or, you know, etc. But these are all safe numbers. These are going to get you where you want to go. And this also allows you to, when you're doing modeling for, say, a plant trough for your culture system, you can get an idea of what's the investment to buy this piece of equipment, what's it going to cost electricity-wise to run throughout your, you know, your, say, a month-long operation, and then how much, you know, is that going to cost you per head of lettuce or per piece of vegetable that you're selling? So you come up with an associated cost. And if it's the middle of the summer and it's costing you another 30 cents per head of lettuce to grow that to fruition just because of this energy, guess what? You raised the price of your product 30 cents. You're not pulling the wool over anybody's eyes. That's the cost of production. And, you know, again, these are usually used in off-season times, which the local terrestrial and dirt farmers, they're not going to have product at that time. So you've got some things working for you. Hope we're all comfortable with that. Here, if you're not and you don't want to just calculate it out yourself, by all means, you're buying this from a manufacturer. Take a look at their information, at their charts, and what they're telling you to buy, because it's their piece of equipment. And if you go outside of their specifications, then they're not going to want to honor warranties, you know, and the product might not work as you want it to work. So this, I love Aqualogic chillers. I'll throw the name out there. There's Free Plug, Doug at Aqualogic. I worked with him for years when I used to work at Aquatic, and they make a great product, okay? They may, I don't know, price-wise, you guys can go figure that out compared to competitors, but I love the product and they perform. This is a couple of charts that are on the Aqualogic website, and they actually tell you right here, chart number 1, uninsulated tanks, acrylic and glass. So kind of more like a fish tank. For polypropylene or polyethylene tanks, take the gallons times 0.8, so 80% of the gallons here, and that's your net gallons. So it tells you this is just for uninsulated tanks. If it's a poly tank like I have here at the farm, it's actually 80% of the value of the gallons here, so because they're less insulated. And then down here is a whole chart for insulated tanks with 2-inch foam on all surfaces. So this, again, one, allows you 5 degrees, 10 degrees, 15, 20. You can stare right here and model, you know, which model here is going to, and it has the horsepower, which model is going to chill at what temperature, you know, how much of a drop down you want and how many gallons you need. So the charts are really, really useful for just looking at it and doing some quick modeling in your head. Also, it allows you to do cost analysis on what is it going to cost initially to insulate the tanks, troughs, things like that, and what's that going to save you in the cost of the chiller and the operating cost of the chiller, which is continuous. And again, it almost always pays off to insulate. So you'll see, you know, we'll take an example here for a 10-degree difference in, you know, this for a 1/2 horsepower chiller, okay? For a 10-degree difference here, a half horsepower chiller will chill 576 gallons of water. But if it's insulated, a half horsepower chiller will chill 864 gallons of water. From, make sure I'm doing this right, yep, 864. So we go from 576 to 864. That is significant just from insulating the surfaces. That's going to drop down. Let's see here. The next smallest one, instead of half horsepower, the third horsepower does 583. So we could drop from a half to a third horsepower and still have a little bit more chilling function than you're going to get from an uninsulated system. So hope that demonstrates that well. These are very good charts. There's other charts that are, I think they're even more detailed on their website. So it's aqualogic.com. Go check it out in your free time. We're going to move on now to UV filtration. All right. This is ultraviolet light, if you're not familiar. And ultraviolet light is used to irradiate the cell wall. It damages the nuclear material inside, which leads to sterilization of the cell or the pathogen. The intensity of the UV light is what is used to size the filter. It's basically the dose of ultraviolet light that we're sending into the water. This is measured in microwatt seconds per centimeter square, or square centimeter. And we size the UV based on the intensity and what we're trying to kill, not the manufacturer's recommended flow rate. So if you blindly go out and try to buy a UV filter, you're going to see a bunch of different diameter UV filters, a bunch of different intensity lights, and they'll have flow rates on them. If you just pick one off of the flow rate, you're actually going to get just a broad range, probably sized at 30,000 microwatts per centimeter squared, or maybe even 15, because it looks real attractive to put a higher flow rate on a smaller light. But that's not the case. We want to do the math on this stuff. So size at 30,000 microwatts per centimeter squared, microwatt seconds per centimeter squared, for algae or for general application. Okay, this will irradiate algae cells. You get nice clean water in a koi pond or an outdoor tank, as long as you have the right turnover rate. So again, that's a broad range, and a lot of times they'll size it 30,000. Just that's the broad range flow rate you get on these UVs. But you get shysters that come in and they'll size them at 15,000, which is half this rate, and all of a sudden they look like their UVs are twice as efficient as everyone else. That's not the case. If the application calls for 120,000 microwatts per centimeter squared, we can increase the UV intensity by 4, okay, 30,000, we can get 4 times more intense of a light source, or we can actually decrease the flow rate by 4 times. It has, if you increase the intensity 4 times, you get that intensity with the given flow rate. If you decrease the flow rate by 4 times, as 4 times the exposure at 30,000 microwatts, and you still get that intensity. So I hope you see the relationship between intensity, flow rate, and exposure time that is happening within these UV filtration systems. The fish culture tank should be turned over a total volume of water through the sterilization, through the UV sterilizer once every 1 to 2 hours. I'd shoot for once every hour, but that's the window that's generally accepted. Formulas for UV filtration are based on clean, clear water with little to no total suspended solids. So you remember those pictures that we showed in the beginning of Freshwater Institute, some of those big RAS facilities, and it's crystal clear, gin looking water. Well, that's what all these formulas are based off of, clear water. So it's very common for recirculating aquaponics systems to only have 10 to 20% transmittance, UV transmittance through the water column, which is not good. They usually recommend 80% or above, and we're at 10 to 20%. And this is in a recirculating aquaponics system, so out to the plant beds, back to the fish tanks. What does this mean? This means the units, if you're actually going to use a UV filter, they need to be 5 to 10 times the normal size to be effective. So that's a huge investment, 5 to 10 times. You can stick one on there and hope you're doing something, but this is the reality, okay? 10 to 20% transmittance, and that's in pretty clear water. It's not a bunch of crap floating around in the water. This is pretty clear water. It just has that tannic stain that we're very familiar with in aquaponics. So, because of this, UV filtration, I would say it's preferred in decoupled aquaponics systems for pathogen control in the fish loop, okay? UV or ozone, or maybe a combination of both. But in recirculating aquaponics, you have to size it right for it to do anything, or you're just wasting your money. So keep that in mind as you do your designs. Quick chart right here. It's kind of hard to see through the camera, but you can look at it on the PowerPoint, and it gives you a nice little list of organisms, pathogens, and what the exposure rate of UV is to actually kill or sterilize that pathogen, okay? So E. coli, we look over here, 6,600 microwatts per centimeter squared. And we're talking about sizing just off a general number, 30,000. So we would eradicate E. coli, which what a wonderful thing. Any E. coli in that water column, we would go ahead and eradicate it. But if you look at something else, specifically, and tomite ick here, we're looking at 336,000 microwatts per centimeter squared to actually eradicate this. Now, I think tobacco mosaic is another one. Yeah, tobacco mosaic, 440,000 microwatts per centimeter squared. So you think about our 30,000 number and 440,000. That's a huge difference. So is it going to do us any good to generally size off of a flow rate that the manufacturer just puts out there that might be 15 or 30,000 microwatt seconds per centimeter squared, if this is what we're actually going after at 440,000? Not at all. So the first step is identify what we're trying to treat. If you have 10 organisms you're trying to treat, identify the highest exposure rate out of those organisms and treat off of that. That's what you go ahead and size the unit off of. We're going to move on to ozone now, okay? We'll touch on this lightly. And just to start off, ozone is an extremely strong oxidizer, okay? It will oxidize nitrite to nitrate, okay? It's that strong. It'll even oxidize and add an oxygen molecule and oxidize nitrite to nitrate without biofiltration. It's extremely strong. O3 molecule, it's O3. Ozone, again, sorry, ozone, the molecule, is O3. So we want to think about what's happening here. Why is it so reactive? Well, it's an unstable molecule. That O3, once one of those oxygen molecules wants to jump off. It wants to jump off and either run into another O3 to form 3 different O2 oxygen molecules, or that oxygen will rapidly react with other molecules in the water, and such as, and that's why we call this a strong oxidizer. It's oxidizing whatever that free oxygen molecule comes into contact with. So in aquaculture, we produce this on site with an ozone generator. There's a machine, you plug it into the wall, and it produces ozone. Ozone is produced naturally outdoors during lightning strikes. When you have that energy bolt flying through the sky, that energy current actually creates O3 molecules. It's a very unstable molecule and quickly reverts to oxygen, and the half-life is 0 to 15 seconds. So again, this isn't something that's hanging out for 30 minutes. You create it in 15 seconds, the majority of it is dissipating. It's used to increase water clarity, reduce total suspended solids, control pathogens, and increase water quality standards. Okay, they call this vitamin O in aquaculture. It's kind of the magic key here to really give you that beautiful aquarium grade water where you have extreme water clarity, and with that you get extreme cleanliness because you're destroying those pathogens. I put this in big asterisks, okay? Ozone is not for the beginner aquaponic enthusiast. You can hurt yourself with ozone. So this is not for everybody to just jump out and run out and get some ozone generators. We must destruct residual ozone through carbon or a UV sterilizer that's rated at a 250 to 260 nanometer wavelength. So a special bulb. Not every UV sterilizer is going to destruct ozone. But what we want to do is, after we create it, we use it in the water to react. Whatever's left over, we want to destroy it before it comes out and into the environment where we're going to breathe it in. High ozone levels can be harmful to you and your employees. It can burn, tiny celiac hairs, other things, cause throat irritation, eye irritation. Not something you want to breathe in. It's not recommended. If you smell it, the levels are too high. It's got a very distinct smell. Not a stinky smell, but very distinct smell. I can't even tell you what it smells like. But if you smell something strange and you have an ozone generator and you don't know what ozone smells like, it's probably ozone, and you need to degas that. Very few harmful byproducts in fresh water. When we use this in the fresh water, the most harmful byproduct is residual ozone. But in salt water, we need to worry about the reaction with bromide and its formation of bromic acid that's going to kill fish quickly. So this is a very big deal. In aquariums and saltwater situations that are using ozone, they will formulate the salt going into the system to be free of bromine so that we don't have this reaction. Very common in public aquariums to have a special salt formulation coming right from these salt manufacturers so they can blast away with ozone and get that real clear water and not have to worry about the forming of bromic acid. So be careful if you're diving into the saltwater end of things. Ozone is injected through a mixing cell. So I don't have a picture of it here, but it basically makes the ozone swirl and increase in pressure and give it a longer contact time over a small area. Best way I can describe it. But it allows that to dissolve into the water in a mixing cell. But we can also inject that into a pressurized device like a species cone, even a low head oxygenator. We can inject ozone right there where we inject our oxygen as well. And it will react, but it will revert to oxygen, which we're creating in that vessel in the first place. So they can go in the same spot. Again, right here, many inject ozone in the same device, killing two birds with one stone. It reverts to oxygen. Experienced aquaculturists dosed based on the specific bacteria, pathogen, or water clarity, total suspended solids, whatever they're trying to actually take care of with the ozone. They dose specifically for that. They don't blindly dose. But if you just want to run a healthy system as an aquaculturist, you would do a broad range dose, and that's currently in the 13. That's commonly in the 13 to 24 grams of ozone per kilogram of feed entering that recirculating aquaculture system. So through a lot of research and development through the years, the aquaculture sector has come up with 13 to 24 grams of ozone per kilogram of feed as a good number to achieve the desired results that we're all looking for from ozone. We'll move over to liner now, liner for your plant troughs. Most use in the aquaponic industry right now use an 8 millimeter white Durascrim liner from Raven Industries. Okay, that's the manufacturer, Raven Industries. You can find them at www.ravenfd.com. And you can also find it sold under a reseller here, globalplasticsheeting.com. I would shop for the best price. There's a lot of people selling this now. As soon as there's one supplier and it gets hot, a lot of other people sell or start picking it up, raise the price a little, try to out advertise the manufacturers, and that's how you get the trickle down of business. But shop around. I'm sure you can find great pricing on Google, and just make sure it's the right material, that it's new, and make sure that they have some reviews so you don't get taken for your money. We here at Chatterson Farms actually don't use that liner. We use a 20 mil high density polyethylene liner. It's rated fish safe, food safe, potable water safe, and they actually even use this inside of humans for medical reasons, for making small medical valves and parts that they install in surgery. It's safe, okay? That is safe. It's as safe as I've ever found for liners. You can find it at www.geocheminc.com. Follow that link right there, and you'll see the liner that we've got. It's a good liner. It's a little heavier duty than the 8 mil. I want to say it's the same price, so you get a thicker liner for the same price. And it's worked really good for me. I've used it the entire time here. A little over 3 years now that we've had the operation up and running on the farm. Now, there's also Firestone Pond Guard EPDM liner, and it's a great liner actually, but it's not able to be certified organic. So if you don't care about that, and you have access to the Pond Guard, and maybe it's a little cheaper for you, use it. It's great material. It doesn't. I've heard all kinds of stupid rumors online about, oh, it harms fish because of this or because of that. BS. I've sold football fields and football fields worth of this liner over my aquaculture career, and it's good stuff. It's fish safe. It's not going to hurt you. Moving on to fish feed now. Unfortunately, it's very hard to find fish feed in the U.S. that does not contain GMOs. It is. A lot of the fish feeds contain a grain component, and almost all the grain components in the U.S. are GMOs. So aquaculture right now does not have an organic certification. Because of that, there's not a fish farming sector that's demanding genetically modified organism, GMO-free fish feed, because they're not getting an increase in selling price when it's going to cost them more for fish food to obtain that organic ingredient. So although we want it badly, the drive's not there yet, so it hasn't been produced. I know it can be produced very easily, and as soon as organic certification standards for fish come out, I'm sure some mills will start producing it, but it hasn't happened yet. There is one available brand in the U.S. here that does not have long-term, that is organic certified, but they do not have long-term studies or feed conversion ratio data, and it's a lower protein content food, pretty much suited for tilapia, maybe catfish. So limited on the species that it offers, and there's not long-term data. I'm not saying it's a bad product. A lot of people use it and have great results. I don't have the experience with it, so I'm not gonna put myself out there for it. But there is, right here, premiumfishfood.com, there is a source. If you wanna buy that food, that is all up to you. Other commercial aquaculture feeds available in the U.S. that I would use and that I think are perfectly fine and will create the nutrient profile you're looking for are going to be Purina Aquamax, which I used for a long time, the majority of my career in aquaponics. That's a great feed. We have Silver Cup, we have Rangan, we have Skretting, and if it's that important to your operation and you want a commercial feed with the background, you've got to import it, okay? You can import it, and we've done that. We've actually imported some feed from Australia because every fish food in Australia is GMO free. They don't allow them in the country. So every one of the fish feeds there is genetically modified organism free. It costs a lot of money, but we're not very far away from having a lot wider accessibility here in the US. Keep in touch with me, and I'll keep in touch with you guys on that and let you know when that changes. Equipment sourcing. So number one, I'll say Google is your friend. I am all for, as you'll see through this, that's why we make things, I'm all for doing it cheap. Okay, it doesn't need to be, cheap and doesn't work. We want it as inexpensive as possible to do the right job efficiently still. So Google, get around, do searches. A lot of people sell the same thing. I've seen some people sell an air pump for $100, and on another site, you sell it for $23. Exactly the same air pump, 4 times as much money. So do some research, okay? Some price matching. Amazon Prime is very worth it. I can buy, let's say like rock wool. We can get rock wool cheaper through Amazon Prime than we can from some of the rock wool supply companies, just buying it right from them. We can go on there and buy it through a distributor for a cheaper price and with free shipping. So it's a little price, for the Prime yearly, but 2-day free shipping on so many things that you're gonna probably use in the greenhouse, aquaculture, and hydroponic side of everything. Pentair Aquatic Ecosystems, it's a broad range aquaculture supplier. I don't know if they're still the biggest in the world. Again, that's where I used to work. But they've got a huge catalog with a lot of things. So definitely a good place that you can source some equipment. We got myaquaticsolutions.com. That's another new startup that's getting into broad range aquaculture equipment. We've got, if you're in Florida, ftffacoop.com. It's a co-op for Florida tropical fish farmers. So they co-op together, buy fish feed in, truckloads at a time. Everybody gets a little bit more of a discounted price, and it helps everybody out. Maybe in the future we'll have an aquaponic co-op where we can do something the same nature, where there's not a main person just you know, making money off everybody. We'll hope for that. Anyways, next thing, Duracast, okay? Duracast is where I got my fish tanks from. Awesome fish tanks. They have a nice rolled lip on the top of the polyethylene fish tanks. Super durable, nice and thick, always come in good quality. So I can't say enough about them. That's an awesome company, and they're very affordable tanks. So you can look at Duracast.com. They also sell them at tanksforless.com. And again, they're aquaculture duty poly tanks. They have square tanks for filters. They have all kinds of stuff. Polytank.com is another supplier. And some of this might come into play with where you're located in the country. Duracast is about 30 minutes from my house, so real close here in Florida. Polytank is up north. So if you're in the northern part of the country, it might save you a few $1,000s in shipping if you're buying a large amount of tanks to get it from Polytank. So again, look at all your options and then make the best decision. But they do culture and some filter tanks. Dolphin Fiberglass is in South Florida, and they do beautiful work in fiberglass, okay, large fiberglass tanks. So if you come to me and say you need a 10-foot tall, 40-foot diameter fiberglass tank, I would tell you go to Dolphin Fiberglass and see what they've got. They have, if you go to their website, they've got a long list of different tanks and things that they've manufactured in the past that you can get remade, because obviously somebody's already made the mold for these tanks. So not only can you dream up whatever you want and have them make you something custom, but you can also look through their big catalog of past projects and pick out something you like from there. So check out their site, good stuff. Plasticmart.com, okay, they are a large nationwide supplier of polyethylene chemical tanks, you know, conical bottom tanks. That's really what I use them for, but they have all kinds of different food grade chemical resistant tanks. So good supplier there. Globalplasticsheeting.com for some of the liner we talked about, the Durascrim. The place I get my liner from, that's back in that other slide. So if you want to go our route, I would use them. Sorry I didn't copy them on this long list. And again, if you have anything else that you can't find, where do I find this? Give me a call, shoot me an email. You know, probably easier to reach me by email, but just let me know, because I've got a lot of experience, a lot of years, and if there's something particular that you're looking for, I might know where to get it. So, we'll move right on from there, and that's the end of it, guys. You got any other questions, by all means, go ahead, shoot me an email at ryan@collegeofaquaponics.com, and I'll go ahead and answer that in our weekly question and answer session. Hope you learned a lot today, and we'll see you in the next session.